meeting of City Council committees for May 1st, 2023. A couple of reminders at the top of the meeting is being recorded. This is an excellent opportunity to turn off or silence your devices at this point, and that during any public comment periods during tonight's meetings, comment is limited to no longer than 3 minutes per speaker per topic. Mr. Harris, would you please call the roll of members?
Yes, Madam President. Mr. Ahmed. Mr. Arroyo.
Here.
Mr. Glees.
Here.
Ms. Craig.
Here.
Ms. Diaz. Ms. Walsh. And President Beke.
Here. Councilors Ahmed, Diaz, and Walsh are excused for this evening. Because of their absences as council president, I will be acting as a member of the Personnel, Public Safety, and Public Works committees. We start with the approval of the April 3rd, 2023 committee meeting minutes.
Motion to approve?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any council comments on the minutes? Hearing none, Mr. Harris.
Mr. Arroyo.
Aye.
Mr. Glees.
Aye.
Ms. Craig.
Aye.
And President Beke.
Aye. All right, we will now open the Personnel Committee. Councilor Cleast.
Thank you, Madam President. Tonight, the Personnel Committee has 3 items on 3 nominations on the agenda for tonight. The first two nominations are Constantine Mendros and Dean Lee Evans for reappointment to the Traffic Commission. And the last item on the agenda for tonight is Ms. Olivia Atlasik for appointment to the City Revitalization and Improvement Zone Authority.
Perfect. And I believe we have all 3 of those appointees here this evening, if you'd like to begin.
Mr. Mendros, if you'd like, come forward, please.
You can use the podium, yes.
Thank you for being here tonight.
Sure.
If you would like to introduce yourself to council and tell us your interest in serving on the board.
Sure. My name is Constantine Mandros, and I've been serving on since the Janice Stork administration. And as being, as I say, a senior member on the Traffic Commission, we bring also not the issues of the current, but also the issues from the past that sometimes reoccur. And our job is to enforce the rules that have been in place by the state of Pennsylvania, and also the ordinances that have been approved by the council, City of Lancaster. And we continuously like to improve, and that is to give the citizens of Lancaster what we say, no harm to the taxpayer.
Thank you. What motivates you to continue serving? What motivates you to continue serving?
It's public service for the citizens.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments from the members of the committee?
That would be me tonight.
But it said 1 minute.
Thank you. Mr. Vandross, thank you so much for being here this
Sure.
evening. I do appreciate it. And I hadn't realized that you had been serving for that long of time. So when Mayor Srirachi came in and said institutional knowledge, she
Yes.
wasn't kidding.
Sure.
I'm just curious to get your perspective on what the most common issues that you hear at Traffic Commission have been.
The issues are residential parking, which has always been a huge issue. Lancaster had a study done back in the 70s, in the mid-70s, that defined the issues of parking as acute parking issues. And to this day, we still have acute parking issues. And it's a constant issue that will be always on our agenda. And it needs us to be looked, we do our best to help everybody out in this situation.
Thank you.
Sure.
I appreciate that perspective. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from council? From the public? So now, thank you for your willingness to serve, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. So now I'll make a motion to move this nomination.
I apologize. I didn't mean to cut you off, but I do believe those nominations are together.
Oh, they're
For
together,
Mr.
so
Evans.
one motion with Okay.
We can talk to Mr. Evans if you.
All right, thank you. Mr. Evans, would you please come forward? Thank you for being here tonight. Would you please introduce yourself and tell us why you want to serve on this board?
My name is Dean Lee Evans. I have been on Traffic Commission 21 years this January, so I'm right behind Dino. And I've enjoyed every year of it.
Thank you. And any questions for Mr. Evans?
I would ask Mr. Evans similarly, excuse me, to what you asked Mr. Mandros, what has motivated you to continue to serve for that time?
You know, I was thinking of that, and earlier I was recalling an incident where we had a Traffic Commission meeting, and some people from the community came, and they said they would like to have seen some pedestrian improvements, and I get a call 2 days later, after Traffic Commission meeting, that Public Works had already put in piano keys at an intersection, and they said it had already improved it, and that's just an amazing thing to be on a board in a city to see something happen so quickly like that.
Thank you very much.
Now, just one question. Is there any new perspective you would like to bring to the board for your new term?
I'll tell you, when Dina was talking about the biggest thing being parking, I am on a subcommittee of Traffic Commission looking at the permit parking issue, but it's not the biggest thing. I would love to see just improved pedestrian safety in the city, and I'm really excited to see the Vision Zero project come to light, and to be part of that is just really exciting for me.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from council?
I'll just add, if I may, that Traffic Commission has changed during my tenure as mayor. Now we have the department director of, Mr. Campbell, Director Campbell, who is now chairing these meetings with a combination of community members, Dean and Dino being the longest serving, and Douglas also sits on the Traffic Commission, as well as members from our police bureau. So it is a combination of engineering, enforcement, and education, which are the three pillars that we're advancing related to Vision Zero. I would also just say that Traffic Commission, it meets people exactly where they are in terms of their streets, their direct streets where they live, often in front of their house. I appreciate the efforts that Traffic Commission has been taking to marshal the Vision Zero plan. All of that work comes through Traffic Commission. And Mr. Mandros and Mr. Evans have, yes, they have institutional knowledge. But more than that, it's the technical understanding of things, of state laws that you just don't get overnight. So I'm just saying that at this point, given the lengthy terms you have served, please begin mentoring your apprentices.
I would love to. I would absolutely love to.
Whoever they might be. So,
Yep.
yes.
Thank you. Thank you for your willingness to serve, sir.
Thank you, sir.
So now I make a motion to move these nominations to our next council meeting on May 9th.
Second?
All in favors?
Aye.
Aye. So the next item is the last item on the agenda for tonight. It's the nomination of Olivia Atlasek for appointment to the City Revitalization and Improvement Zone Authority. Mrs. Atlasek, would you please come forward?
Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you for being here tonight. Would you please introduce yourself and tell us why you want to serve on the board?
Sure. So my name is Olivia Atlasek. There's, I would say, two main reasons why I want to serve on the board. First one being that I'm a proud city resident. My husband and I bought our house on the northeast side of the city in 2020, and we couldn't be more happy to be part of the community here. It's such a privilege to be able to serve on a board that has done so many great things for the city. And then secondly, my background is in finance. I work in public finance. I've worked in public finance for the last 6 years. So my team and I focus more on tax-exempt public finance. So we do a lot for school districts, townships, municipalities, anytime they have big financings that they're embarking on. So even though the CRIZ obviously focuses on taxable entities, there's a lot of knowledge overlap there. So I feel like I could be a valuable asset in that sense as well.
Thank you. Any questions, Madam President, for Ms. Adlasik tonight?
No questions this evening for you, but I did want to thank you very much for stepping up to fill this role. The CRIZ is a very important board in our community and helps a lot of our small businesses, and your knowledge is clearly going to be an asset to the group. I noticed that Marshall was here this evening. I wasn't sure if there was anything that you wanted to add or just here for moral support, and that's okay. Okay.
The only thing that I would add, and I just want to also thank Christina Dio, who's here as a member of the CRIZ Authority, is just to state that Olivia's appointment came through Senator Martin's office, and you'll recall that the CRIZ board is, our members are appointed by Senator, how many are there? 4? 6 from Senator Martin and 3 from the city of Lancaster. And so this, I received a letter from Senator Martin's office with Olivia's recommendation for her appointment as well as her resume. That was shared with all of you. I just wanted to make that note.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from council?
Councilor Cleeks, I don't have a question. I just have a comment. I look forward to working with you.
Oh, thank you. I look forward to it as well.
That's nice. Any questions or comments from the public? Thank you so much for your willingness to serve.
Thank you.
Now I make a motion to move this nomination to our next council meeting on May 9th.
Second.
All in favors?
Hi.
Aye. That concludes Personnel Committee for tonight, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilor Caliste. We then move to Community Planning Committee, of which all the members are here. Councilor Craig.
Thank you, Council President. We have 2 items on the agenda tonight. First being Administration Resolution 33, amending the sewer control plan to include Lombardo's property project. Hi, Douglas.
Here we go. Right?
Yeah.
Good evening, councilors. Good evening, Mayor Sarachi. This is a standard sewer planning module. You're very familiar with these. The Lombardo's project is a redevelopment of the restaurant that Mr. Sam Lombardo and his family own on Harrisburg Ave. And in this project, which will be a land development, it's been submitted as a sketch plan and is under review right now. It's the combination of multiple lots that he owns into one larger lot, and some additional outdoor and new indoor restaurant space that he's looking to build out. So he's looking to expand his current restaurant operations. That does include some 3-row homes on the West James Street side of the block as well that he's looking to maintain as rentals as part of this new restaurant complex that he's creating. As a standard practice, he's requesting additional sewer flow capacity for the expansion of his commercial facility. It's recommended for approval. We have capacity for it, and there's no overflow seen in the next 5 years in this area. Seeking your approval for that.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the committee? Any questions from council?
That'd be me. Douglas, good evening. Thank you for being here. Just because this was recently in the news, because this particular parcel is also being considered for Historical Commission, to put it in context, this is a completely separate approval, does not give any approval outside of Historical Commission. It's simply for sewer capacity. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank
you
you.
for clarifying.
Any further questions from council? Questions from the public?
We're all looking at you.
Maybe. Thank you. I'll make a motion to move this to full council on the 9th.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, the second item on our agenda this evening is Administration Bill Number 7, amending the zoning ordinance. Hi, Douglas.
Hi, I'm here again. Councilors, may I do a presentation for you? I'd like to get the computer hooked up. Oh, there we go. Okay, let me get this into presentation mode. Okay, so tonight we have before you a proposed zoning ordinance amendment that strictly deals with short-term rentals. You may recall that a year ago, you voted on an amendment. So I'd like to walk through a little bit of that history with you, get you acquainted with the process we've had recently, and then give you the details of the ordinance amendment. So first, just to start with a basic understanding, we'll revisit the definition of short-term rental. A short-term rental is a single-family home, and that's the only structure type permitted as an STR. It is, and assuming all other requirements are met. So this is a structure that's rented for 30 days or less, and it does not include apartments, multifamily, two-family dwellings, etc. Those have never been permitted as a short-term rental type. So last year, almost a year from today, City Council adopted a zoning amendment, which included the following changes to short-term rental regulations. We retitled it from visitor house rental to short-term rental. We removed the short-term rentals from most residential neighborhoods, which is R3 and R4. And we added a definition, a use actually, for homestay, which allows homeowners to rent 1 or 2 rooms while they continue to live in the structure. And this does include most residential neighborhoods. So this is I think both council and the planning commission saw this as an economic benefit to the homeowners in the city, that they can use their structure to rent 1 or 2 bedrooms on a short-term basis. So here's an update on where we are with short-term rentals right now. As of April of last year, there were 215 short-term rentals operating in total. As of today, there is 182. So we have seen a reduction in those numbers in the year's time. The approximate distribution across the city is on the screen here. We have 10% in the southeast, 10% in the southwest, 40% in the northwest, and 40% in the northeast. So the majority of them are north of King Street. The total with zoning approval last year was 48. We've nearly doubled that, and we are at 94 zoning compliant short-term rentals. To me, these statistics are wins. We have greater compliance in the community. That's a good thing. And I think that the reduction makes sense given that we've prevented a large area of the city from allowing short-term rentals. And lastly, the Zoning Hearing Board has heard many requests for variances on the new ordinance that you adopted, and in nearly all of those cases, the Zoning Hearing Board has upheld the ordinance. In one case, there was a variance granted, and the city appealed that determination, and the applicant did back out of that. So in all cases now, the ordinance has been upheld. We began an engagement process earlier this year, on January 4th, 18th, and on March 15th, city residents and short-term rental operators joined Planning Commission. Sorry, I should have specified. These are Planning Commission meetings. City residents and short-term rental operators had discussions on those 3 presentation dates. On March 22nd, the Planning Commission reviewed regulatory strategies for short-term rentals during a 1-hour executive session with legal counsel. This is to explore a number of the recommendations you heard from residents and from others in the community about how we might be able to regulate short-term rentals differently. I think the short recap of that is that we have fewer tools than many other states and communities have to regulate short-term rentals. On April 5th, the Planning Commission did unanimously recommend the zoning amendment that's before you this evening. And on April 27th, county planning staff recommended approval and deemed the zoning amendments consistent with Places 2040. So actually, let me just say one more word here. Overall, the Planning Commission, through their discussions, became interested in permitting short-term rentals in more commercial environments, which is where they would be most appropriate, considering that a short-term rental is a commercial use. We engaged a number of stakeholders in that process and heard the same from them. So both the commission and the operator agreed that that would be an appropriate move. The challenge is that in our commercial districts, we don't have many single-family homes, and the current definition requires the structure to be a single-family home. So the commission became interested in permitting these in apartments. So I want to walk you through a little bit of that language. A residential unit above a storefront in a commercial area is currently prohibited by our definition of short-term rental. However, it would be a compatible use. So apartments, as defined on the screen here, is a dwelling unit or efficiency which is located in a building containing one or more non-residential uses on the street level. So long as there's one or two apartments above a commercial use, this is an apartment in the city of Lancaster. So this does not include multifamily buildings. I just want to be 100% clear here. When we say apartments, the zoning code defines them as one or two above a commercial use. Once you get to 3 units, it's a multifamily building. So that brings me to amendment number 1. The amendment is to permit short-term rentals in mixed-use buildings with 1 or 2 apartments above a commercial use. The justifications here are a few. Short-term rentals are permitted in commercial zoning districts where there are not many single-family homes. Short-term rentals could also become a minor economic development tool for vacant upper floors in the downtown and other districts. And the zoning ordinance has a strict definition of apartments, and it does not include multifamily buildings, 3 units or more. I have the proposed text here if you want to dig into the details a little bit more, but I don't think there's anything different than what I've stated here. So maybe we'll hold questions, and if we need to come back to this, we can do that. Amendment number 2 is really to clarify parking requirements for homestays by requiring no parking for 1 homestay and requiring 1 parking space for 2 homestay units. Justification, it was actually never intended to require a parking space for 1 homestay. It's a technical error in the text. Planning staff sees 1 homestay akin to a typical family household where there's 1 operator and then there's another person that's staying. And however, two homestays may create a parking demand that would go beyond a typical household. Also, numerous requests have been submitted to the zoning hearing board. I think all of them have been granted for the parking variance for 1 parking space, which is aligned with this amendment here. Again, I have the proposed technical text here if we want to get into it. But that's all I have for you. It's a very brief amendment. Happy to take any questions from councilors, mayor, or anyone in the public.
So, Douglas, does the requirement for parking, so how do you make a requirement for parking if there's a short-term rental above a commercial business in the downtown area? So they, okay, I answered my own question. They would have to provide parking in the garage. Because on the street, that would be kind of odd.
The parking, that's a good question, Counselor. The parking requirements would still be waived in the commercial districts, the commercial business district, really our downtown CB and CB1. There's no parking required in those districts. So if there were, say, a mixed-use building on, the 0 block of Queen Street, where I know that there are some vacant upper floors, they would not have to provide parking in that district. But as soon as they move into one of the other districts, say mixed-use district, they would have to provide parking in that instance. So it could be on-site. Actually, it would have to be on-site for a short-term rental. So it could be on the first floor in a garage or somewhere outside the building.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions from the committee?
If I may, Councilor Craig? Thank you for the presentation, Mr. Smith. A couple questions regarding the homestay, just for clarification. When we say one homestay and versus 2 homestays, is that renting 1 bedroom versus 2 bedrooms?
Precisely.
Okay.
Mhm.
And then regarding the short-term units above commercial spaces, so just kind of taking into consideration the, housing challenges that we have in our city right now, is there any concern around limiting supply when we start to add units above commercial spaces, taking them off the market for long-term and potentially for short-term use?
So it's a good question, and certainly that's something I think we've all tried to be conscientious about as we've gone through these amendments. Certainly the R3 and R4 being removed from the district was, I think, very important for protecting housing stock. There aren't that many buildings. To be honest, it's hard to count how many because of the way the land use codes are. I can't easily tell you how many structures there are where there's 1 or 2 units above, or the potential for 1 or 2 units. It gets difficult to count. However, I think we can say confidently that that is not the predominant building type or the predominant source of housing in the districts where we're currently considering these. We do know, however, that there are a lot of upper floors that are sitting vacant, and although they may be turned into short-term rentals, those would be new units on the market and would not compete with current housing. The other win is that once you create a unit, it's a short-term rental today, but maybe it's not always a short-term rental. So even having that stock in our market is a positive thing. I believe it's something we should keep our eye on, over time and see how this proceeds. Currently, there have been a few operators who have provided some testimony to the Planning Commission about how important this was actually for them as a tool for renovating an upper floor that really otherwise becomes very cost prohibitive because of building codes or even the cost of renovating a historic building in the upper floors. And I believe that there's one of those operators here today, and maybe you'll hear from them as well. So I hope that addresses your question in part.
And if I could just follow that, thank you, Douglas. I think that's a very good overview. And Councilor Roy, I appreciate you elevating this. I mean, I think that that's ultimately what, there were a few concerns that were driving the initial change a year ago. And one of them was around the number of units that were being converted to short-term rentals in neighborhoods as it related to housing, the predominance of housing in that neighborhood. And the second was just about neighborhood fabric. You can't build a strong neighborhood when there are people constantly turning over week after week. So this, I feel like it accomplishes our goal of continuing to focus on the economic impacts of short-term rentals and people who want to come to the city to visit, but don't want to stay in a traditional hotel. And they want to have a full kitchen and they want to have a little bit more privacy. As an economic driver for our small businesses and tourism here in the city is important, as well as housing. And so balancing those needs, I believe we are continuing to strike the balance, and I appreciate Douglas and the Planning Commission taking the feedback that we got after we passed the ordinance in May, hearing from operators who, quite frankly, when I would meet with them, I don't have a legitimate reason in a commercial district to not allow a commercial use this way. And so I appreciate that council is taking up this conversation. Your question is important. We have to continue to focus on that. And if we can get upper story redevelopment happening in otherwise vacant space, that space then becomes productive in other ways that benefit the downtown and the city as a whole.
Thank you, Mayor.
Are there any further questions from the committee?
Yes, if I may. Thank you. Just one question. The mayor just pointed out the economic impact on the community, but overall, what would be the impact of this amendment on the community?
I believe it would be a positive one. As the mayor said, bringing those additional spaces to life hopefully will make them productive for the city, now and into the future. I believe that they do strengthen the city's tourism base in the appropriate areas of the city, which does bring dollars into the downtown as we become, a very popular place to visit. I also think that we're in keeping with our original intent to protect the general neighborhoods of the city from speculative investment on short-term rentals. Just a back of the napkin calculation that we did, we looked at sales in the last 5 years where units became short-term rentals and where they did not become short-term rentals. And the difference between those two groups was highly statistically significant and was $100,000 an average difference. So units that became short-term rentals sold for $100,000 more. Units that did not become short-term rentals sold for $100,000 less. Now, there are a lot of reasons as to why that may be. Perhaps short-term rentals buy larger houses. Perhaps they buy more expensive houses. There are those sorts of things. But I think anecdotally, we also know that there are houses that are being purchased at higher values because investors know that they can get more money out of them as a short-term rental. So they outcompete average home buyers in the city. So I think it is very important that we're in keeping with our original intent, but also opening up short-term rentals as a new economic development tool in the right places.
So, and have you been monitoring and evaluating the impact of this bill? Those impacts on the community?
We have been, yes, and I'll just revisit that slide earlier with the numbers. Here we are. We did actually change our service from Granicus to a new company called Deckard because they identify up to 90% of the units in a city. So we went from identifying about 70% of the units in the city as of just a couple weeks ago. We can now see 90% of those units in the city. So we continue to use a third-party service to track the presence of those in the city and where they are. That service also allows us to send out automated violation letters. I think when we began this process, we understood it was going to happen in phases over time, and it wasn't going to be immediate. So we continue the education process. We continue to walk people through compliance where we can, and then in certain situations, pursue enforcement.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
No further questions. Thank you.
Are there any further questions from council?
Councilor Craig. Thank you. You mentioned this, and I want to just clarify something that I've often heard, and I don't know if it's a myth, and maybe it's not that many units after all, but something I've always heard is that the units above many of our downtown commercial businesses would not be able to be rentals, regular rentals, because of code requirements, ADA requirements, things like that. Short-term rentals would not have to conform to those things, is that correct? Or they still would?
I don't have those details offhand immediately. It gets complicated with building codes.
Sure.
Mayor?
I think what I want to say, and we can come back to answer that question, is that the challenge with renovating upper story development in historic buildings is that we have state building codes which require methods of egress that include additional stairscapes, et cetera, as well as the need for elevators more and more, especially if you're not just carrying your luggage for a night, you're carrying everything up and down those steps every week, as well as the historic properties that these that have these upper stories that are vacant. So I think it's more of a matter of, it's really expensive to do it, and that doesn't preclude them from becoming apartments, but the ROI to get back what you're investing to meet all of the state building code standards is a longer time horizon versus a short-term rental. So that's my understanding of the economics of short-term rentals and vacant upper stories versus apartments. We are having a conversation, and this is a thing that we can talk about more later, about having a subset of the state building codes that would accommodate upper story development in historic downtowns, where it is much more difficult to meet to the letter of the law all of the requirements of the state building code because of the historic nature of the buildings. So that's a conversation that we're continuing to have, but right now there is one official state building code that we operate from, and every parcel has to meet that regardless. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Is that your experience, Mr. Young?
You want me to talk about it?
Huh?
Please.
I mean, you've been a practitioner in this space. If you would, I'm putting you on the spot. I hope you don't mind.
No, yeah, that's what I came here to talk about.
Do you want to introduce yourself and?
Yes, my name is Evan Young, and I own 213 to 219 West King Street. So we have Larkstone as our storefront, and it's 2 buildings, 2 land parcels. So what it takes to develop the upper floors is a lot. You have to have firewalls. You can go 2 routes. You can do a point system where you put in firewalls and extra egresses. That particular system did not work for me because the egresses there's a math you have to do where the exits have to be a certain distance apart. So your fire escape has to be a certain distance apart from your existing stair tower or stairwell, whatever you call it. So that didn't work for me, so we had to go to the sprinkler route. Now, luckily, we can do a 13D system. That's kind of a new rule that we figured out how to finagle into using. A 13D system is a plastic sprinkler system. It runs off of a pump. You don't have to use city water pressure. You don't have to bring in, 2-inch pipes. But it's still expensive. Like, it's not free by any stretch of the imagination. It does make it so it's feasibly possible. The other things that make it expensive is that these places have been vacant for decades, like decades. And so every single thing is broken. You're not doing some light updates on some, 50s decor. It's not like a matter of ripping out the gross carpet. It's every single thing, the entire plumbing system. The electricity in my building actually worked. Our old knob and tube was still functional, still code safe, except that the system that was put in only had 1 outlet per room. So that's not functional in modern life. You can't do that. That doesn't pass code. You have to bring it all the way up to modern code, which means every single thing has to be new. So, I ran all my own plumbing. I hired an electrician. I fixed all the floors. I rebuilt the walls. I rebuilt the ceiling. It's a lot. It took me a year and a half. The reason I developed my upper floor is because, I bought these buildings in 2017. I have 5 commercial tenants, and then we opened our store in the front of the building. And when the 2018 tax code, that tax update or whatever, the reassessment, it raised my taxes on the properties by over $1,000 a month. It was a big hit. Typically, what you do is you just pass that expense along to your tenants. I really did not want to do that, as I did not want to make them suffer a higher overhead than they already do. So I didn't raise their rent. I cashed in my entire retirement account, and I developed an upper floor so that I could offset the cost. And then a couple years later, I found out that I was non-conforming. I really thought I was okay. I had misunderstood what single-family home is. I had a single-family occupancy permit, but I did not have a single-family home permit. I just didn't understand what that meant. So yeah, that's why I'm fighting for this, is because if I lose STR, like if I lose that additional revenue, I have to raise everybody's rent by 10%. And I just don't want to do that. That's not, I make decisions on a values-based system, and the beginning, middle, and end of every decision I make is, am I building the city that I want to live in? And the city I want to live in, has a really cool ballet school and a really cool art, like recording studio, and they have overhead that they can afford. And if I have to pay for that using tourist dollars, yeah, I'm cool with that. That's great. What else? What else can I say?
I think that's good. Thank you, Mr. Young. I appreciate your sharing your perspective.
I'm sure your tenants appreciate you too.
Yeah, I love them as well, so.
Are there any further questions or comments from the public?
Just a comment, Councilor Craig. First, thank you, Mr. Young, for sharing that. I really appreciate it. And just a general comment, Mr. Smith and your team, just really appreciate coming to council with data and also consistently looking at policies and looking at how we can evolve and looking at feedback to make them better. So just want to say that I appreciate that.
Thank you, Councilor.
Wait, I have one more thing. You guys can probably understand the incentive to develop the upper floors brings these upper floors onto your tax base. I don't think people don't always make that blatant, but let's just make it blatant. We're trying to increase the tax base so that we can be better team players.
I do have one question for you. I'm curious to know about the pump that gets connected to the sprinkler system.
Mhm.
Where is it? How big is it?
Yeah, so in the basement of our building, we now have these gigantic, big, huge, I think it's 300 gallons worth of water and these big cylinders. And there is a 50-pound water pump that's run by electricity connected to the bottom of it. And if the sprinkler heads go off, it triggers it to just start pumping really hard.
Cool.
And then it has an auto top off as well. So more water will start dumping in. But yeah, the other option, the full residential system, you use a city water pressure, you bring in these 2.5-inch pipes, and then it just sits at 80 PSI or something like that. And it's crazy expensive to bring in. In my case, to do that system, we would have to dig up King Street and bring new water pipes in. And it's a no-go. I think I asked for a quote one time, and they just laughed at me and they said, you can't. So,
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I appreciate you not tearing up King Street. Any further questions from council or the public? Okay, I'll make a motion that we move this to full council on the 9th.
Second.
All in
Aye.
favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Council President. That concludes community planning.
Thank you very much, Councilor Craig. Thank you, Douglas. All right. We move now to the Public Safety Committee. Councilor Arroyo, I've asked you to chair this evening, and I will be part of your committee.
Thank you, Council President. We have one item on tonight's agenda, Administration Resolution Number 37, 2023, recognizing police policies regarding immigration. A little brief summary on this resolution. It recognizes the City of Lancaster's commitment to welcome our immigrant community as evidenced by its recertification as a welcoming city. A couple points I'd like to point out regarding the resolution. It mentions and ensures access to services by implementing a language access plan and also expanding. City also has ensured that all of the members of the Lancaster City Police, Fire, and Housing Bureaus have been trained in trauma-informed practices, and that the City Bureau of Police and its members do not intervene in federal immigration matters and only cooperate with immigration and customs enforcement when required by applicable law. Another item I'd like to point out is that this resolution has the City of Police codifying in written policy its practices of not intervening in federal immigration matters and only cooperating with immigration and customs enforcement when required by applicable law. That's all I have. Mayor Sirachi, is there anything that you wanted to add to this resolution?
Not at this time, thank you.
Thank you. And I don't think we have anyone here to speak to that, so that's all I have. Any council comments or comments from the committee?
I don't have any at this time, Councilor Arroyo, but thank you for summarizing it. This came out of our conversation at our last meeting, so I appreciate the administration working to gather this quickly and turn this around for us, so thank you.
Any questions from the public? No. With that, I'll move this resolution to full council on May 9th.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
That concludes the Public Safety Committee. Council President?
Thank you, Councilor Arroyo. We move then to Public Works Committee. Councilor Walsh would be the chair of this committee. She is absent this evening. Councilor Kalik, if I could have you chair, and I will be a part of your committee.
Okay, thank you, Madam President. So the first item for the Public Works Committee tonight is the Administration Resolution Number 34, 2023, requesting a grant for the Beaver Street Pocket Park project. So it's a resolution of the council authorizing the filing of the Commonwealth Finance Authority Act 13 application for funding in the amount of $250,000 grant. I think Mr. Director Campbell is here to address that for us.
Yes, good evening, Council. Thank you very much for having me to present this. This is, the Beaver Street Park is a pocket park in the 200 block, I believe, of South Beaver Street. I believe it's in the 200 block of South Beaver Street. It's a property that had been part of RACL, and we acquired it as a means of being able to put it to positive recreational use for the community. It came into our hands just as Cullerton Park was being completed, and it was discovered that, if you will, the needs of the community were a little bit different now that Cullerton Park was online, and so it required an extensive re-outreach to community to identify the better uses for that site. It has some stormwater challenges, and so as part of the budget, $100,000 from the stormwater fund was put towards it, and as well as $90,000 from the general fund for capital construction. We got a grant for about $126,000 from DCNR, and as the design was developed, including stormwater management, two play areas and two paved areas, the cost increased so that the total cost for the construction of that site is approximately $690,000. The difference we have is approximately $295,000 because we do in fact have private donations in the amount of $77,000 and counting, by working in partnership with the Trust for Public Land, which is working with a number of organizations to find donation dollars, as well as funds from the Representative Smith Waddell's embedded funding commitment. So the difference that needs to be met is approximately $250,000, and there is this money available as a grant from the Greenways, Trails, and Recreation Program, GTRP. So we would like the permission to be able to make that application for that grant funding to make that project whole. And our hope is that the decision would be made by September, at which point it could finish off the work for that park.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Director Campbell. For the public information, would you please summarize how the community will benefit from this project?
Yes, certainly. There's been extensive outreach to that particular community. There have been design charrettes and discussions with the different community members to identify what their particular needs are. There are two play areas planned. One is for ages 2 to 5, and the other play area is for ages 5 to 12, and it's play equipment. From my experience in Washington, D.C. and elsewhere, the play equipment installed itself is more than half the cost of this. However, we get better prices here in Lancaster, so we can actually install more. So there would be areas for sitting, areas for young children to play, as well as for tweens, if you will, to play, accompanied by their parents. It also manages some stormwater for that particular area, which is susceptible to some light flooding, and it's in the catchment area that feeds the Hoffman's Run, which is the waterway that's under Water Street.
Thank you, Director Campbell. Any other questions from the committee?
I don't have any further questions, Councilor Klug's, but thank you, Director Campbell. Actually, I do have a question. I'm sorry. I lied. You mentioned the time frame, maybe in September. Are there any matching funds required for this grant, or would this be a full grant if we should be awarded?
That's a very good question. There's a requirement of 15% matching funds, which adds up to approximately $37,500. And we've been told that DCNR's funding can count as the matching funds. So we do not need to add any further funding from the city coffers into this project.
That's great news. Thank you.
Any other questions from council?
Councilor Calise.
Please go ahead.
I am trying to, I'm terrible at visualizing.
Uh-oh.
I'm trying to get this because the 200 block would be,
It's not the 200 block.
it's not, it's down at the end, right? The
Yeah.
one with the building that has all the artwork on it?
Yes, exactly.
Got it.
Yes,
think it's
that's the building.
300 block, yes.
Okay,
So it's as if you
My
were,
apologies.
yeah.
okay. That was my only confusion.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the public?
Yes,
No.
public.
Now, I'll make a motion to move this resolution number 34, 2023 to our next council meeting on May 9th.
Second.
All in favors?
Aye.
Aye. And the second item on the agenda for the Public Works Committee for tonight is the council resolution number 36, 2023, recognizing National Public Works Week. It's a resolution from council celebrating National Public Works Week in commemoration of the tens of thousands of men and women North America and the city of Lancaster who provide and maintain the infrastructure and the services collectively known as public works. Director Campbell, do you have anything to say about this resolution?
Thank you again. This is a resolution that we often engage in on an annual basis for Public Works Week. This year's theme is called Connecting the World Through Public Works, and we will have several events and tabling events during the week of the 21st, I believe, which is Public Works Week. The resolution reasserts not only the city's motto for Public Works, which is dedicated to your public and dedicated to your quality of life, but also engages the larger principles that are nationwide for public works.
Director Campbell, why do you think that this resolution is important for the community?
So I look for every opportunity to provide greater visibility of the people, the hardworking people, men and women who are building, maintaining, and taking care of the city of Lancaster. I think that many of the things that have happened over the last few years, including the sidewalk repair program, our ability to self-perform some of the paving of the streets, et cetera, has increased the appreciation of the public of our staff. I'm very proud of the work that they do. They are very proud of the work that they do. And I think that we are building a stronger Lancaster because of the ability to have a career in public works, not just the streets and the trees, but also the waterways, the utilities, et cetera. So I'm very, very proud of it. It's very important that the people who otherwise are not seen ordinarily are recognized as part of what builds the foundation on which people's day-to-day existence exists.
Talking about that, I want to thank you, Director Campbell, for putting your knowledge, your experience and expertise to the service of the community of the city of Lancaster.
Well, thank you very much, but it also is people like our city engineer, Cindy McCormick, our Deputy Director Christine Volke-Hilditch for utilities, and the Deputy Director Matt Metzler for construction and operations, and the intelligence of the staff beneath that makes it all work. But I do thank you very, very much. We're very proud of the work we do.
Thank you. And any other questions from Madam President?
Thank you very much. You mentioned some of the things that I wanted to make sure we called out when we spoke about this tonight. I've really appreciated how DPW has stepped up in community engagement around educating the community about initiatives, ways that they can help with stormwater, ways that they can learn more about what happens on a day-to-day basis in the city, on their streets, below their streets, coming out of their tap, that sort of thing. That has increased, 20-fold, even since I've started on council. So I've appreciated that so much, and everyone's willingness to embrace that, and the way that you've elevated the jobs of our Public Works Department into really great careers. And I just wanted to ask, how many city employees work in the Department of Public Works?
It's approximately
Give me a ballpark.
It's approximately 210 employees. In every of the arenas that we're talking about, the utilities, water and wastewater, stormwater management and sustainability in the environment, the streets teams, and parks and the entities that take care of the recreation. It's approximately 210, and approximately 140 or 160 of them are union members.
Absolutely. I will always thank whenever I see a member of DPW, particularly on the weekends, changing the trash bags downtown. It is the one area which we take care of the street litter bins, and I always appreciate them doing that after a long weekend and they get very full. So I always say thank you to those
Very
folks.
good. I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Any other questions or comments from council?
Councilor Cleeks, I don't have a question, I have a comment. I would echo everything that my colleagues have said and commend DPW for the magnificent work that it does in the city of Lancaster, all 210, if not more. We appreciate you.
Excellent. Thank you very, very much.
Any other comments or questions from the public? Okay, so I'll make a motion to move this resolution number 36, 2023, recognizing National Public Works Week to our next council meeting on May 9th.
Second.
All in favors?
Aye.
Okay, the last item on the agenda for Public Works Committee tonight is the administration resolution number 32, 2023, approving an agreement with the school district of Lancaster for stormwater facilities.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm Cindy McCormick from the Department of Public Works. We are asking for approval to enter into an agreement with the school district related to a stormwater project that we're partnering with them on. This is considered an intermunicipal agreement, so therefore we need a resolution from council. So the diagram on the board is showing, in stormwater, we're constantly looking for opportunities to separate our sewer and our sanitary sewer and our storm sewer. So we've identified various locations throughout the city where there could be opportunity for that. And one of them is in the area of the McCaskey campus, in the area of Lehigh Street, Broad Street, that general area. So this map is showing one of the schematic designs that our consultant has developed that would separate the storm sewer in this area. So the shaded colors are sort of showing those different drainage areas that could be picked up if we install new piping along Broad Street, which is showing those red dots there. And then there's also some options to include some additional piping on Franklin Street. So the school district came to us, and part of that plan would be using some of the school district property to route that stormwater and to get it eventually over to Groff's Run. So that's, we did the daylighting of Groff's Run a couple years back, so that allows the opportunity to get some of that stormwater out and then eventually to the Conestoga River. So part of this plan was using part of that McKiskey campus. The school district came to us and they are looking to install a turf field next to Wickersham Elementary. So you can see sort of that green hatched area on the plan is showing where a turf field is being proposed. So we partnered with the school district to use part of that area to store stormwater. So during a rain event, the stormwater would go into this facility and be stored, and then would eventually discharge and go out to Groff's Run. So sort of showing those, actually this isn't, that concept plan isn't totally correct. And I think there were some other plans in do you have the other part of the exhibits that were provided? Okay, that's fine. So basically, we're working with the school district to use part of the area under the turf field to store stormwater. They are also using part of it to deal with their stormwater associated with their project. So this agreement is basically entering into an MOU with the school district to guarantee that the city will pay their portion of the project. It's an MOU because we are working through the actual easement agreements and cost sharing and maintenance and operation, but the school district is under a tight time frame. They're trying to get this field constructed before the fall. So the first step is entering into this MOU because they are getting ready to award the contract to the contractor. So this MOU will, guarantee the city will pay our portion of the project and that there will be a subsequent agreement that will provide the easement agreements, again, detail out the cost share and the maintenance and operation moving forward. So the school district is also presenting this at their board this evening as well. And this would be a phased project. So since we weren't quite ready to implement our project, this would basically just build that storage area under the field for now. And in a later phase, we will come back and install connection piping once we install the piping along Broad Street. So that connection piping would be provided to that storage area then.
Okay, thank you for the presentation. And what is the importance and the impact of such agreement for the school district of Lancaster?
So this agreement's it's guaranteeing that the city will provide the contribution. They went to their contractor and included this portion, that the city was wanting them to construct into their bid documents. So we're very appreciative of all the cooperation that the school district provided to us for that. So this document is just providing those guarantees for the school district that we will provide payment for our portion of the project.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the committee?
Yes. You mentioned the turnaround is tight, but there isn't a budget yet, so we don't know what our amount would be, or, because I noticed there's
I'm sorry, yes, we do know what our budget amount, our budget amount will be in the range of $500,000. They received 2 bids. I haven't confirmed which one they are going to be going with, but our portion is, for one bid, it's a little bit below 500. The other portion is a little bit above, so it's in that range of 500,000.
Got it. Thank you.
Yes.
Any other questions?
Counselor Claes.
Please.
So Cindy, you said that, that we need to meet the field that's not going to be connected right away?
Correct.
So I think what I'm getting at is, so if it's not going to be connected right away and it's going to be installed anyway, so in the meantime, the stormwater will still gather and do what it normally does
Correct, right.
until we get the drainage hooked up to go to golf
Groff's
run?
Run.
Groff's Run?
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
I would say that there are a number of different opportunities that are on the McCaskey campus for additional stormwater mitigation that are being looked at. And we are essentially coming before council to seize this moment, given that if we lose it, it's gone. Like, they're not going to tear up the turf field to put these holding tanks underneath. It's also at a very important location because you can see all of the dots coming down Franklin Street, the number of blocks, the amount of runoff that's moving into that field. And Groff's Run and the daylighting of Groff's Run was part of a multi-phase analysis of the entirety of the McCaskey campus. While they are pursuing field upgrades as part of their Phase 4 improvements to the campus and to other school district of Lancaster buildings, we just don't want to miss this opportunity. So the sequence is a little off, but it's also part of a bigger narrative that we will be able to share with council once we have that plan more established. That plan, just to tell you, includes the school district of Lancaster, but it also may have impacts for Manheim Township. So there's a number of moving parts to looking at the campus. In the meantime, I remain very grateful to the school district of Lancaster for being amenable to working with us to utilize a lot of open field space and to utilize that space for underground storage of stormwater. We're actually pretty lucky that they are so amenable to these conversations and that our timing is syncing up.
Thank you. What is the timeline of this project?
So they are looking to award in the next few days, I believe, but as I mentioned, they are looking to have this ready for use, I think in late August for the fall sports preseason.
And so what I can tell you about that too is that it's an equity issue for our school district that we have no turf fields, and our teams, and I'm just going to speak as a field hockey mom and a field hockey player, that many of our competing teams have turf fields, and that's what collegiate play is on turf fields. The fact that our young people are still playing on grass is very antiquated, and it is an equity issue in terms of being able to compete. We had some incredible players last year that probably didn't get the looks from other Division II schools because they didn't have turf experience. That's sort of an aside, but that's just to tell you that they're trying to get this field constructed so that this next year's field hockey and I believe soccer will have the opportunity to play on a turf field.
Thank you. And could you tell us how this project will affect the members of the community living in that area?
So I know the school district has invited us they're planning on providing a public meeting just related to the neighbors for them to, understand what's going to be happening related to the construction. I know they also want to be addressing lighting and that kind of thing with the neighbors, just to make sure they understand what, is proposed and what the impacts might be. So the city plans to participate in that as well. Obviously, the major impacts that our project would have on the neighborhood would occur when we go to do the separation.
Thank you. Are there any questions?
Councilor colleagues. Cindy, there are two graphs here. Are both of those fields going to be done?
Victory Field is what she's pointing out.
Okay, yeah, so we're still evaluating that one, that side of sort of the west side there.
Okay,
We're
so-
still evaluating whether that makes sense from a feasibility standpoint.
Okay, and then the last thing that I want to ask is now that, once the tank is, or whatever it is.
It's a stone bed, yeah, so
Okay.
it's a large area that's filled with
So
stone.
once it's installed on there and we need to, what will we need to run in order to get it to Groff Run?
So there is some pipe, there's a green line that sort of runs diagonally through that area right now. That's where our large diameter sewer goes, but a few feet off of that, there will be a bypass pipe that will carry the flow. And then eventually it needs to go through some swales on the campus and, yeah, eventually works its way around. So we'll have to do some further analysis to make sure that, there is capacity, or that we may need to make some other upgrades as far as culverts or different things like that on the site, but that's still to be evaluated.
Okay, and has anybody estimated the additional cost for the pipes after?
Yeah, we do have, for the phase of doing the construction of down Broad Street, related to that, I believe it was, in the range of $1 to $1.5 million to do that. We haven't actually done the estimating for what's needed on McCaskey campus yet.
And do we have a timeline for getting that done?
That's a great question. We are starting to look at how we can be phasing projects, all our projects related to stormwater. So obviously now that we're installing this sort of bumps it up in priority as well. So I would imagine over the next couple years, this will become, something that the next year, I would say, we'll probably start design related to it. So in the next couple years, the piping would be installed.
And Cindy, how many gallons of stormwater will be managed in this site?
I do not have the gallons. I do know it, just the Broad Street line would manage about 9 acres of impervious area.
It's a lot. So just the other thing too, that is part of the green infrastructure plan is cost per gallon. And there's a benchmark that we use that anything under, what is it?
I'm sorry, I don't recall.
We'll get that
what
to you,
is,
but
yeah.
there's a benchmark that we use to basically determine, is this cost feasible? And so there's a number of criteria that have to be used: cost per gallon, the feasibility, the impacts in a neighborhood, et cetera, that we look at in terms of making a decision about whether or not this is feasible. Obviously, the great partnership with the School District of Lancaster and the amount of green space and space that we can build these really big stone beds and for water retention and for 9 acres of land is not an opportunity that we see every day.
Thank you. Any other questions from council?
Just one more.
Comments? Just one more.
Just for clarification, so it sounds like there's a broader plan currently in the works, and this is being bumped up just because School District is currently working on construction, so we're seizing this opportunity to get this in place while we have the opportunity.
That's it.
Sounds great. Thank you for that clarification.
Any other questions from the public? Hearing none, thank you very much for the presentation and for the
Thank you.
information. Thank you. So now I make a motion to move Administration Resolution Number 32, 2023 to our next council meeting on May 9th.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
That concludes Public Works Committee, Madam
Thank you,
President.
Councilor Caliques. I appreciate that. We then move to Economic Development Committee. Councilor Arroyo.
Thank you, Council President. We have one item on our agenda tonight, the ARPA updates, which during the last council meeting, we approved the bill for the allocation of the $5 million awards to the community facilities projects. The only other update that I have is that we'll be making check presentations this Friday. All of council should have received an invitation to join in on that presentation, and super excited to see some of the awardees. That concludes our committee, Council President.
Thank you very much, Councilor Arroyo. We then move to the Committee of the Whole, and there's two items for our consideration this evening. The first is our Resolution Number 31, 2023, and this is recognizing Jewish American Heritage Month. And I think that, so this was important. I know that both Mayor Srirachi and I had asked for this to be on our calendar for May. In a time of increased anti-Semitic rhetoric and hate, it's important that we recognize this month and the contributions of Jewish Americans in Lancaster. And in advance of this, I have reached out to members of JCAL in our community to ask that they be in attendance at our next meeting in anticipation of us advancing this resolution. I don't have anything further. Are there any other council comments on this resolution from the public? Hearing none, I would move that we move Council Resolution Number 31, 2023 to our next full meeting on May 9th.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. The second resolution similarly is a resolution in recognition. This one, Resolution 35, 2023, recognizes Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. Again, unfortunately, we introduced this in a time of increased anti-Asian hate in the country. It's been prolific over the last several years. There have been acts of violence committed against this community, and we recognized this, I believe, for the first time last year. There is a growing and active Asian American Pacific Islander community in Lancaster, and I have asked them to also attend our next meeting to speak to council, and believe that this is important to recognize. Any other council comments on this resolution from the public?
Madam President, if I may.
Mr. Harris.
I was contacted by one individual who had asked about this resolution and asked about, possible representing the Asian American community, and asked about amendments to it. And so we may be seeing changes to this. There might be revisions that come before you
Absolutely.
on the 9th.
Okay. Can you connect me to that person, Mr. Harris?
Certainly.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Hearing no further comments, I would move that we move Resolution Number 35, 2023 to our next meeting on May 9th.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. We then move to the clerk's report. Mr. Harris.
Yes, Madam President. Of course, I submitted that to you in writing. I gladly go over some highlights.
I always appreciate when you do, when we have time, so thank you.
Excuse me, writing and research. So the National Public Works Week resolution and the Jewish American Heritage Month resolutions are ones that I wrote. The Asian American Heritage Month resolution is one that I updated. Prepared the sewer plan amendment resolution for the Lombardo's project that was before you. I researched rules for Benz Park and searched for a traffic signal agreement for city staff. I researched removal of a portion of Susquehanna Street from the city plan for city staff, and I responded to records for several ordinances regarding water and sewer rates. I administered the Boards Commission Authorities orientation. Solicitor Handwerker did that. I simply facilitated. I think we had about a dozen people that attended the last quarterly update at the beginning of April. Statements of financial interest. I've now received 70 statements of financial interest for the 2022 year that have been filed by city staff, and quite a few that have been filed for boards and for attorneys for the 2022 year. And I thank the administration for their efforts in submitting those and our compliance with the the state ethics law. I attended the Parking Authority meeting on April 27th and provided you a summary of that meeting. Under miscellaneous tasks, I provided information to one counselor regarding pet ownership. I assisted the city health officer in notifying individuals regarding, well, this room when that it had been, when it needed to be exterminated, and notifying people that had booked this room when that action had to be taken. Working with city staff, I provided our code publisher with a revised version of the stormwater ordinance that was adopted last year. Apparently, the version that we had submitted when it was transferred to Word to PDF, it had eliminated some of the formatting, which while we're in the process of codifying, we want to get that formatting back in. So that change has been done. And as usual, I've communicated with counselors, members of the public, and city staff at various times on a variety of issues. I frequently posted and archived agendas, minutes, and resolutions for council as well as boards, commissions, and authorities.
Thank you very much, Mr. Harris. We appreciate the work that you do for us. It is not easily summarized in a very short document, so thank you very much. All right, having reached the end of our committee meeting agendas, I will hear a motion to adjourn.
Motion to
Motion to
adjourn?
adjourn?
Second.
We got a motion and a second. All in favor?